Welcome all. Madam, welcome. Shall we start the session, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Of course, we can start, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Please continue your session.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So, as a second part of this Python session, we saw the basics. Now we are going to see about a little of ML, machine learning. Morning, you would have had a theory session on machine learning. So, I suppose you all know what is machine learning, what are all the various algorithms there. Though we will not be implementing an entire full algorithm, we are going to see few simple examples from existing data sets. So there are so many existing data sets in the internet. Iris data set is one example. Then salaries data set is one example. So we have few already existing data sets which has been used for many machine learning applications to start with. Probably if you have your own application which is going to generate a set of data, those data you will be using it for your application with your own algorithm. So that is how this machine learning goes. So I'll be now showing you few code snippets where we are going to use some classifier or predictors for existing data sets like the iris data set and salaries data set. We'll try to apply them and we'll try to find out what are all the clusters or classifiers available with that predefined data. So we all know what is machine learning. I'm not going to elaborate on that. We'll be directly going on to the hands-on part. So people who have already installed Python, at the end of the previous session, I also shared the Python installation link, Anaconda Navigator link. So if you have installed and ready, then you can work parallelly with me. But in spite of that also, you do have to install few packages. Identifying the right packages and installing them properly is a very key task of using Python. MATLAB comes predefined with all your packages, and so that is one advantage of MATLAB. But Python, for maybe you are using an application which calls for a special function. The function will be available, but it will be available in the package. So if that is the case, you'll have to install that package. So that becomes the biggest hurdle here. You will have to install packages, and it will increase the size of Python on your disk. Though it is not that large as compared to MATLAB, it does increase the size of your Python package on your disk. So here also, we are going to see few machine learning algorithms. And I'm going to first show you the set of packages that I have used and how to install those packages. It will take some time. People who are ready sitting with Python, please run these commands in your command prompt. So there is a PowerShell. When you open your Anaconda Navigator, you will have a PowerShell. That is where I said initially I gave you Jupyter Space Lab. So you can go to that PowerShell. So this is a running PowerShell because I've already opened my Jupyter Lab. So you can see few commands. In your PowerShell, you can go and give these commands for installing the packages that is required for running these codes. So once you are done with install, it will take some time. It will consume some of your internet data. Once it has installed and it is ready, you can go ahead with running the programs that I'm going to show you. And one more thing is, sometimes there will be dependencies between the packages. So the packages might not be installed properly. In that case, you will be forced to uninstall some conflicting packages and then reinstall. So this is what I feel. This is entirely my opinion, that this is the major drawback of Python. Getting it to run, getting it to stand up and run is a task in itself. Once that is done, you have a lot of functions, lot of packages, which will make your programming very, very easy. You can write 4 lines of code for machine learning. Even for getting a matrix input in C, we are going to write a lot of code. But here it is not that. You just write 1 line or 2 lines. The entire machine learning code can be written, regression coding can be written in 10 to 20 lines. But making it to connect with all the packages literally takes some time and takes some expertise. So you might require some time in installing these packages. If they are not properly installed, uninstall the conflicting packages and then reinstall. Even sometimes you'll be forced to uninstall Python itself and reinstall. I did it twice before running up all these. I had to uninstall Python twice and reinstall because there was one particular package which was conflicting all the time with the previous version of my Python. So I was supposed to completely uninstall, remove all the files manually from my drive, and did a fresh installation of Python, and everything worked good. So that is how it
Ma'am,
works.
please share your screen, madam.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm yet to share the screen, sir. I'll start. I'm just showing the command prompt now. I'll shortly share my screen.
Okay.
I'll do that, and then probably we can continue. Is it visible, sir?
No, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes, madam.
Yeah.
Visible.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Just give me some 2 minutes time. So this is my command prompt. Because this is the running prompt, you see some things. So you are going to open the Anaconda Navigator. Go for the PowerShell prompt. You'll be given the prompt with the drive in which your Anaconda is actually installed. You might get C users with whatever name you have given. So in that prompt, you'll have to install few packages. So these are the packages which are mainly required for most of the machine learning applications. It covers almost a variety of functions that is required for data handling as well as machine learning. The first one is the NumPy. We saw this example in the morning session itself. The next one is the SciPy. The next one is Pandas. Then this Matplotlib. This Matplotlib, as the name suggests, you can see it is used for visualization, for plotting and visualizing your data. And the last and important thing is the scikit-learn. The scikit-learn has a lot of data handling applications for performing a transformation on your data, for doing an inverse transformation. So there are a lot of functions which is available in this scikit-learn. The scikit-learn was actually causing an error for me. I couldn't install it properly. So I had to do a reinstall of my entire Python. Sometimes it happens. I'm not saying this to scare you. Sometimes it might happen. So in that case, the easy way out will be installation might not take more than 30 to 45 minutes. Just do a revamp, clear all your backup files, go to the directory manually, delete it, do a restart, and then fresh installation will resolve few of your issues. So these are the commands for installing the various packages I've given. So people who are ready waiting with the Python, please go to the PowerShell prompt and type the commands that I've given here. First one is conda install -anaconda numpy. So almost the same command. For certain packages, the command will change. It will become conda-forge. For few packages, it will be conda-forge. For matplotlib, it is conda-forge. For all the other things, it is conda space install space -c. Spacing is very important. No space between hyphen and C. And then space anaconda space package name. That is the general format. Sometimes we'll have to use conda-forge. So it will take time, one after the other. It will ask for OK. Once you give conda install -c anaconda numpy, it will ask whether do you want to proceed. It will be doing these changes. Give Y and enter. It will download from the internet and it will do. So you must have an active internet connection. It will extract from download from internet and it will install in the prescribed location where you already have installed your Anaconda. So these are the commands. People who are working with Python, maybe I can give you some time. At least you can note down the commands. It will take each and everything might take 5 to 10 minutes depending upon the machine you are using. If it is fast, it will get downloaded fast. At least you can just make a note. I'm going to share this Word file, obviously, but still then you can just make a note. People who are waiting with Python command prompt can make a note of it and do it. And the last command is a complete update. It will update all existing packages to the recent version. That is also highly recommended because it will automatically update your packages. Because this is a freeware, it keeps updating now and then. Some functions gets obsolete, some new functions are added in its place. So it keeps updating. It becomes better and better with each release. So it is also and it's a good practice to update once in a while. So the last command is for that, conda update all. It will update all existing packages to the current release. So now we'll proceed. So after installing, we are going to, after installation, you will have to import them into your coding. Installation alone doesn't make it available. You'll have to import and then use. Previously also we saw this NumPy package, we imported it as using a variable. So this variable is completely user defined, you can use, but the best practice is to use a short form of that so you'll know which package is being used. So you are going to use this particular packages. After installation, see, I'm using NumPy, Matplotlib, later I'll be using scikit-learn. So few packages I'm going to use from the list that I showed you now. So now with these packages, so I've divided my ML session because everyone is new to Python here. The first session, I'm actually generating random data and trying to give you some visualization functions, basically. So throughout this second session, we'll be using existing functions from libraries which we have installed. So the libraries are nothing but the NumPy, Matplot, and all the other packages. So existing functions from these packages, we'll be trying to take and use. Obviously, you can write your own function. If you want to write your own function for data slicing and dicing, you can obviously write your own code. But as of being a new user, we are going to use pre-existing functions. So you just have some data pertaining to your own research or your own project domain. You take the data, use existing function, and then you manipulate, visualize, or you try to learn or predict or classify or cluster with those data. So that is what we are going to do. I'm showing it with existing data. So here, first segment will be normal visualizations. We'll see how certain functions, plot functions, how to create your own data. So all these things we'll see. The next segment will take existing data and we'll try to use ML algorithms like clustering, classifying, prediction, SVC, SVR. So I hope you are familiar with all these machine learning terms. I do have a document for machine learning also for the specific to the functions that I am going to show you. Pertaining to that, I do have a text file. So these are the main things we'll be seeing today, a glimpse of these things. In regression, we'll be seeing linear regression. We are going to see linear regression with respect to single variable and multiple variable. And then we are going to see classification with the help of k-nearest neighboring algorithms. Of course, clustering with k-means algorithm. And then we are going to see SVC and SVR, support vector classifier and support vector regression. We are going to see those two types. So we'll be seeing linear regression, clustering by k-means, and then we'll be seeing support vector classifier and support vector regression. My assumption is you people know how it works. So we are going to see that hands-on. But in addition to that, I have this few text documents which I'll be sharing with you later. Maybe if you want to know, this is just a basic. You can see I'm just giving you two lines of everything so that you'll know what is AI, actually what is the difference between AI, ML and deep learning. Actually, they all fall under AI and how they are different. So those things, and then why Python, the packages, the important packages I already showed you. I hope you know the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning. In supervised, we have targets. So all these things are familiar. These are the theoretical part of it. So with this information, we are going to go on for the hands-on. So first, import the NumPy package. So you're going to import the NumPy and the Matplotlib. specifically in the matplotlib, I'm going to get only the pyplot. I'm taking the pyplot. Matplotlib is a very big package. It has a lot of functions. I'm taking just one of a part of it, a class of it, and I'm going to use it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own data, X and Y. The first part will be data generation. I'm trying to plot that. Then we'll go for reading from a CSV file or reading from a URL. How to read data from a Excel file or from a website, how to do, we'll see that. So now here I have given X is equal to np dot a range. It is actually a range. It is not a range. It is a range from -10 to +10. So that is the range I've considered. So I'm taking data from that. I'm putting that in Y and I'm trying to plot. So it is going to be a linear line. I'm just trying to mark a scatter plot. So this is just a scatter plot with the data that I've generated using a range function. I'm using a scatter plot. Now this is one specific function, the scatter plot. Scatter plot, as you can see, it is going to create blobs for each and every data point, and it is going to give you a you can mark colors. So I've given the default color. So for each and every functions, you have a lot of parameters here. As I always say to my CSE students, my way of solving a program is not the only way of solving it. It is my way, that's all. Some person can use a different logic itself. The logic itself will vary. I'm trying to find out a year is leap year or not. I might follow a logic of taking the last two numbers and dividing it by 4 or doing some mathematics and trying to calculate. Some person might take the entire year and try to find out what is the logic for calculating whether it is a leap year or not. So here the logic itself differs. Sometimes the programming will differ. I'll be using for loop, another person will be using while loop. Some might use functions for calculating. So anything can happen. Anyone can use anything. So my way of writing code is not the only way. There are multiple ways. Some codes might be optimized. Some codes might not be optimized. So there are differences. So an optimized code might be running faster, whereas few codes might be a little slow also. So it all depends on how we have run. So here scatter is one function, one such function which is used for plotting the data. It is going to create blobs and it is going to print out the necessary data points in a graph within the range that I have given, -10 to +10. I have not given any other feature for that scatter plot. We'll see later, we'll be giving some additional features. You can vary the color, you can vary the range, you can give a legend for this x-axis, you can give a legend for the y-axis. Anything can be done. So first we'll run it. So I've executed. It did take some time because I was importing matplotlib, so it did take some time. And once it is done, I've given the x and the y data part. I've just got a scatter plot. This is what we call it as a scatter plot. All the other things I've left to the default value. I might not be able to give you all the parameters or all the functions within this span of time. I'm just giving you a flavor of YAML in Python. It is up to us to get interested and view how many parameters are there. Are there any other functions other than scatter for plotting? So there are obviously there are multiple versions of doing a particular work. So this is one version of it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to vary the x and y value. Initially it was x and y the same. So we got a linear line, just a straight linear line. Now I'm modifying it to a value. I'm making y as the power of x. So I'm making it as x square. So instead of putting x *2, I'm using the function dot power, which is available in the NumPy package. So this is another way. So for each and every example, we are seeing little different ways. You can create a list of -10 to +10 and then use the double star operator, which is an exponent, just used for exponent. You can calculate the exponent using the double star, store it in y and then plot x and y. So that is one way of writing. Because I have already imported NumPy, I'm using np.power, which is a function which directly calculates the power. So I'm giving the variable raised to 2. What is the power I'm going to give 2? So it is calculating that and storing it in y. And then I'm using the same function, PLT. This PLT comes from the matplotlib package. So that is the package from which I've taken this PLT, and then I'm going to use the same scatter function to plot the values. So this is how my plot will be of x square between -10 and +10. And the next function is x cube. The same way, I'm not doing anything. I'm just given x cube. So if we want, we can just plot and see the values here, but it will go for a long way. But anyway, I'll just show you so that you'll get a feel. I've commented those lines. These lines I used for debugging. I've commented them with hash. So you can see these are the values for x and y, which is actually getting plotted. So you can use such comment lines here and there to debug. For this 4 lines, I might not need a debugger line, but if it's going to be a bigger one, you might require printing few variables in between and checking whether it is correct or not. So for all these things you can use. So once you are done with it, you can either remove or you can just comment and keep for later verification. If you are going to import a different data set, and if you want to print and see, you can just have. So comment and keep, it will always be useful sometime later once debugging. So this is x cube. So you can see the difference, how the curve varies. First it was a straight line, next it was a downward U, now it is a little crossed. So now I'm going to do it for a polynomial. So I have x cube plus x square plus x. So here I'm going to create it. So this is how it looks. So initially I'm doing it for 2. I'm merging 2 plots. You can see here I'm actually merging 2 plots. So x is the same thing, -10 to +10. Then y is nothing but your x cube, and this y1 is what is done as the polynomial x cube plus x square plus x. I'm creating 2 plots, one over the other. So first one with y1 and the next one with y. For y1, in order to differentiate, I'm marking it as red. See, representing color. As I said earlier, scatter will have additional parameters also. One of the parameters is giving the color. You can vary the marker, you can vary the border line, you can insert legends, you can suppress the axis values. These axis values can be suppressed. If suppose you don't want these values to display in your graph, that can be suppressed. So there are multiple functions for doing that. You will have to study. Each and every function has to be studied, and then depending upon your requirement, you can call those functions. So here, in order to differentiate, I'm marking the first plot in red and the second plot I'm leaving in the default color. So for reference sake, I've printed both y and y1. You can see there is only minor differences between this y and y1. That's why we are almost getting a overlapping plot. X, this red color is the polynomial, whereas the blue color or the cyan color is actually a x cube. So this is how you actually generate plots. So plots can be easily generated using the scatter function. It is enough if you just give the x and y. All others are only additional. If you are to just start, you don't want to add any additional features, just give x and y coordinates. It will automatically plot a random variable. Now, the next important point, I'm trying to add a random noise. So for random noise, I need some random data. So the random normally distributed data can be easily generated. So what I'm going to do is I'm using this function random.norm. This is also under your NumPy package. You should use the proper variable here. So instead of np, if I'm going to use plt, this plt comes from matplotlib. Obviously, a random.normal is not there in that, so it will throw error. So make sure for which package you're using which variable. I'm using those variables are actually objects. People who are conversant with Java and C++ will be able to appreciate what is an object. So this object is used for calling this particular function. So I'm using that object. For NumPy, I've created NP as the object. For Matplotlib, I've used it PLT as the object. So using that, I'm going to call the corresponding function. So you should use the corresponding object. You shouldn't cross your objects because it will not be available. It will automatically throw an error. So these are all few mistakes that we do when we start doing it with Python, because it is completely in terms of classes and objects. So I'm going to use np here, np.randomnorm, and I'm using the size function, which is given length. I told you when in your previous class, the length is going to give the actual size of a particular array or a list or whatever you are passing it inside. So I'm multiplying it with 15, just a constant, just any random number, 10, 15, 20, just to create the noise. So I've created the noise. Now my plot, I'm going to add this noise, this Y noise with Y. For few applications, I think for ECE or even EEE, you might require creating random noise, adding and see how the system performs for few simulated studies. So in those cases, you can use such functions. You can create your own random noise. When you're doing a simulated study, you can create your own random noise, and then you can insert and see how the function varies. So with that noise, you can see the plot has actually grown in size because of the random noise here and there. Though it has retained its shape, it has lost few of its accuracy. So we'll run and see this one. It will vary each and every time because we are generating a random sequence. It will vary between runs. You can see here, between runs, it will vary a little. You can see some points inserted, some points deleted, because it is a randomly generated number. Though it maintains the same structure, the sequencing of data points have actually modified. So this is for inserting random noise. So you can insert random noise and plot and see. So scatter will be a very, very powerful graphical tool for plotting out your data and see how things have worked out. So this is without any data. I generated my own data. I generated my own random noise and tested it with my application. So the next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try. So we just plotted them. Now we are going to calculate clusters. I'm going to create blobs actually. So I'm making blobs. I'm going to create groups of blobs and I'm going to try to create them. I can create my own clusters. So you need not create clusters manually by adding data. Just one function call to this specific function called as the make blobs will help you create your own cluster. So if any of you have completed installation, maybe you can try to run any of these code. Try to import. If you have successfully imported, then probably it will be easy to create your own blobs. So in this, I'm going to use the scikit. I'm going to use the sklearn function. So in that sklearn function, I'm specifically taking make blobs. You can import everything. That might be a little clumsy. So whatever that is required, you can just take and use that for our own application. So you can see here, as always, I've taken the matplotlib also. Though I have included there, if at all I want to run this file as a standalone, I still need. That's why I've given import in for each and every function. Once it is imported, it is there only. But it is a good practice to have it separately for your file so that if at all you are going to run this as a standalone in another machine, it will be there. That import command will be there. So that is.
Madam, sorry to interrupt. One participant asked how to import. Sir, how to import what?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I'll tell them, ma'am.
Okay. Mac. Okay.
This is the command for import. The first line, we saw it in last class itself, import numpy as np. So that is the command for import. Installation command I showed you. It is conda. This is the command for installation. Conda install -c anaconda. Give the name of the packages. So these are commands for installation. For importing, the first line. See, this is the command for importing. Import numpy, that is the package that is being imported. You cannot vary this numpy. This is an inbuilt package. You cannot vary that. But numpy as np. This np is a user-defined variable. It's an object actually. You can vary that. You can even give your name. If you want, you can even give your name. Import numpy as Kumar. It can be given obviously. But wherever you want, you should use Kumar. That's all. So for use of ease of use, we'll be using multiple packages. We'll be importing multiple packages. So it is always a good naming practice to say numpy as np, shortened form of this particular package. This is the name of the package and this is the name of the object we are going to use. So this is the command for importing. Import numpy as np. Now we are trying to import another package. That too, we are specifically importing pyplot alone as plt. So this object will be used for calling functions pertaining to matplotlib, whereas NP object will be used for functions that pertains to NumPy. So this is how we import. Installation alone doesn't suffice. You will have to import those packages into your code, and then only you will be able to use. So np.arrange, plt.scatter. So which means scatter is a part of matplotlib. Arrange is a part of NumPy. I hope it was a little clear. So if you have already installed, maybe you can try to import first. You need not even give any code below. Just try to import, give a shift enter. It will import. You will get a star symbol here. There will not be any output. If it comes out again after the star, if you get out the result again, it means it has successfully imported. People who have installed, those who are running Python currently in your machines, if you have installed, you can just try to import. Even if you got any errors during installation, might be scikit might create some problems, or pandas also might create problem. If it is creating any problem, at least try to install NumPy. Conda install -c anaconda NumPy. Just install NumPy. Command come to the Jupyter prompt. Try to import NumPy as NP. Even if others are not installing, this NumPy is a very simple package. It doesn't have any dependencies. It won't cause any hurdles also. Just install it in the command prompt. So this has to be run at the PowerShell prompt. This should be run at the PowerShell prompt. Just the first line, conda install -c anaconda NumPy. It won't take more than 5 minutes. Just install it. Once it is done, come to the JupyterLab prompt. Give the first line alone, import NumPy as NP. If it comes out clean, there won't be any output. Just give shift enter or go to run and then run selected cells. If it comes out clean, it means the package has been imported. Good. Someone has typed all the 5 codes. Was it successful? Okay, so let me know. I'll be constantly checking the chat window also. Let me know if it was successful. So you are getting an error. Do it one after the other. Matplotlib, I think, is causing some errors for you. Yeah, it is causing errors. Try to execute them in the sequence. Sometimes sequence code might cause error. NumPy has to be installed first, then pandas, then scipy. You also should maintain the sequence and try and see how it is getting installed. So if you are having any errors during your installation, just check with NumPy. That will validate your Anaconda installation. Check just NumPy. It will be fine if someone can tell me if at least NumPy was successful.
Sir, Hans Bruce. Sir, you can unmute your mic. You may ask your doubt, sir.
Yes, participants also can unmute and ask, because once I go to the JupyterLab, I'm not able to get a prompt for the chat window. I keep talking. So if you have any doubts, please unmute and interrupt me. We'll try to solve it. Yeah. Okay, sir. You just try to install or just to install NumPy. To start with, installing NumPy and importing NumPy itself is a big success. Okay, yes. So that might be the problem. You just try to install NumPy. It will download and it will take some 3 to 4 minutes for installing. It is a relatively very small package. It will install. Then try to import. Go to the Jupyter prompt and try to import. So that will be the command for importing. If this is a success, you are on the first step. Once it is done, you can try to install the other packages for ML, because running a ML algorithm is of course a big thing. So it will take some time. People who are just learning what is Python, it will be a little bit of a task only. As I said earlier, getting and making Python to a running state, it in itself is a task. Then only we should think about ML. So first we'll work on NumPy. You just import and see if it is working fine. If anyone can post in the chat window. I'll be happy with that. So we'll just proceed because I just don't want to stop with just having a NumPy matplotlib because this is on a hands-on session on machine learning. We'll see the applications. I'll be sharing all the codes and the commands also. You can have your own self time to install and see. And if there are any others, any errors or any corrections, you are most welcome to reach me in my email ID. And so this is how it goes here. So we have actually created the random plots. So random plots have been created. So we tried creating it with the different graphics, X square, then a polynomial, then we tried for a noise. So it all went fine. So that is a random plot. Now we are going to generate random clusters. So that is also possible, not just random points. We are just going to create random clusters. So the function that is used for that case is the make blobs. So I'm going to take make blobs function, which is available in the scikit-learn kit. So sklearn. So that is what the package shortened form is. I'm going to take it. So this is the command. The first line is the command for actually calling those libraries. You're taking this library and you're asking it to import the makes blob function. So the first line, I've highlighted it, you can see. So that first line will actually import. You're installing, then you should import. These are the two important steps. Installation done at the PowerShell prompt. Importing should be done at the Jupyter Notepad prompt, interpreter prompt. Okay, so here I have given the command for importing the make blobs function, and then I'm actually calling the make blobs function in the second line. So this function takes few parameters. Here also there are additional parameters. I've skipped a few parameters which is not required. The first parameter here is the samples, number of samples. It can be any number, 1000, 500, 750, 250. What is the number of samples you want to create, number of data points. So the number of data points is given here as n samples. And then you are going to specify the centers. So this will determine the cluster size. If I give here 5, it will create 5 clusters. So it is creating the centers. So depending upon the number of centers that you give, it will create those many number of clusters. So centers, I've given it as 3, and then I'm not giving any random state. You can give a random state. It is for generating a random number. We have a same equivalent thing in your MATLAB also. You can use your clock ticks for establishing the random state. I'm not going to complicate, so I have given it as 0. And then I'm going to give the cluster standard deviation. So we are calculating a standard deviation as a metric for clustering. So I'm giving the standard deviation as 0.4. You can give any value. Based on that, your plots will be either closely knit or it will be widespread. So how you are going to give the standard deviation will make your clusters look either closely knitted one or a little spacey one. So this is the function for make blobs. Now, after I've called the function, I've created the samples and it is passed to x and y coordinates. So x and y variables, it has been passed. Now what I'm going to do is, now I'm again going to import. So see here, for each and every interpreter, I've given this import function. So import, again I've given here. It is enough if you just do it once, because I'm having them as separate files for separate running and showing you. I've given it in each and every interpreter, but once you have imported, it will be there till you close your Jupyter Lab. After you open it, restart, or if you open it again, you'll have to import. So that is how this import actually works. Because I'm having everyone as a standalone and I might run them, even if I'm going to give you and you want to run only this, you shouldn't be searching where is the import. So that's why I've given it in each and every cell for a particular file. So here I've imported again the matplotlib, I've imported again, and I'm trying to create the scatter plot. Now for this scatter function, you can see here I've given some additional parameters. That is because I'm using it for creating blobs. There it was just random points, so it is enough. I just give x comma y. But here I'm going to create some random points. I'm going to cluster also. So clustering, how I'm going to do. So I'm going to give x and y. What I'm going to say is, I'm going to see, I've given the parameter c. Now this c parameter stands for using which variable you are going to cluster. So c for cluster variable. So based on what I'm going to cluster based on y. You can see here I have a y variable there. which was given out by my make blobs. The blobs is actually giving out clusters for me. So I should give the scatter plot based on what it has to be clustered. So I'm just giving the scatter plot, cluster it based on Y. So this is the size of the blobs. So if you give 20, it will be too small. If you give 50 or 70, the blobs, the round will look little bigger. So this is for the size. And then CMAP is spring. So there are various other functions for this CMAP. CMAP can also be spectral. You have a thermal kind of a image in view. If you had actually worked in image processing, you can see the grayscale range from 0 to 8 can also be given. So those things, spectral, spring, there are few parameters, but for these blobs, spring is an optimal one. Your spectral and others will not look good for creating clusters. So I'm using this springs parameter. There are obviously additional parameters for this CMAP, how your graph is actually going to look. Each and everything has its own purpose. Say suppose you want to create a cluster and you want to visualize a cluster, you can just go and search for how this scatter works. Are there any other way of representing the scatter plots? There are obviously different ways. By varying the CMAP, you can vary the way the cluster scatter plot looks like. So this is the important parameter based on what you're actually going to cluster. I'm doing it based on the variable Y. So I've given that and I'm going to do it. So I'll run here. You can see the star prompt. I think I didn't run this. It's just a warning because I'm using a depreciated version. So it is okay. Warnings can be ignored. Make sure it is a warning. They are just saying that I cannot be using this function in the higher version of Python. That's fine, absolutely fine. And now I get the plot. So say, suppose I just want to modify the number of clusters. I have left all the other parameters default. I have not even mentioned the colors for my parameters. If suppose I'm going to modify this as 5, if I want 5 clusters, I'm going to run it again. See, the second time I execute it, it is much faster because the import function is already done. I think you would have noticed that first time when we run this particular interpreter cell 4, it took a little time. You saw the star here. But now when I'm doing it, you don't see the star. It's just executing in a hurry. So you can see, so that is how it works. So now you'll be actually seeing 5 clusters. So here you have randomly generated data using make blobs and you are doing a clustering. You can vary the size. If you vary the size, it will look too little big. Of 2 clusters. So this is how your make blobs works. And now that is for creating different clusters that might be used for few applications. The next one is we are going to try to fit a line. We are going to fit a line fit. Fitting a line is a part of how much your line actually fits your data. It is one way of making sure that you have actually done the correct part. In SPM, we'll try to fit a plane, try to differentiate between the 2 clusters. So all these things can be done. So for this, I'm again importing the NumPy package as NP, and I'm going to use the function linspace. So this linspace actually creates my data for xfit between -1 and 3.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fit the line. So for line fitting, what is required is the slope of the line as well as the y-intercept. So I need 2 data. Everything I'm giving only randomly. I'm not deriving it from any data set. So actually, if you have a data set, you can try to fit a line. When you fit a line, you will take the slope and the y-intercept from the data. You'll be calculating it from the data. Instead of doing that, I've directly given the values here. I've given the slope and b, and the variable b is considered as the y-intercept. So I've taken 2 values and I've given M and B, which is going to be the slope and the y-intercept, which is required for fitting the data, and X fit, and X is the actual data I'm generating using linspace function. This linspace function is available in the NumPy package. So I'm using this package to actually generate my data, and then I'm calculating the slope and y-intercept, and I'm trying to fit the line Y. So this is how it is done. I'm doing it in a for loop because I've given 3 different sets of slope and intercept. This is one set of slope and intercept. This is one more set of slope and intercept. This is the next step of slope and intercept. So each pair is a combination of slope and intercept. So with that, I'm trying to fit a line for the XFIT data. So I'm going to use the plot which is available. I'm not using the scatter plot. I'm using the plot which is available in the plot matplotlib. So I'm using PLT, and then I'm plotting XFIT and YFIT. In addition, I'm also giving a color, red color for the lines. So I'm going to give the, so see, these are all additional functions. X limit, you can fix the X limit -1 to 3.5. So you can fix the X limit, you can fix the Y limit, you can give legends. So each and everything has a function. Using those, calling those functions, using that specific object, PLT object, you will be actually able to create the plots. Finally, I'm going to give a show plot. So plt.show should be there. Scatter will automatically appear. So here, give a show so that the plot appears. So we'll try to run this. So here you get the plot. So we have fitted 3 lines. As I said, 3 lines with these data, slope and intercept, slope and intercept, slope and intercept for the original XFIT. So this is how your fitting a line works. So for line fitting, all you need is a slope and intercept value. Here I've given them randomly. You will be generating that from your own data. If you have your own data that is driven by your own research, then you can take this M and Y or this M and B from your own data and try to fit a line using the plot function and then show function. This limit is just an additional feature, trying to fix the limit. You can just do this. So these are all. So the first 2 things we did was to create our own random data and try to create clusters or fit a line or draw a curve using scatter plot and other things. So those are the basics for graph representation. Now we'll try to load some data and we'll try to see how it actually works. So this particular code, we are actually going to create k-means clustering. I'm taking a data that is available in the internet. We call it as the iris data. We are taking this iris data. I hope you all know this iris data. It is actually the it is a very popular data. I'm not sure if you people are aware of it. I'll just show you the database also. I do have it. So this is the data set. Is it visible? I think you are able to see the data set here. So this is the data set. So we have what are all the fields in this data. First one is the sepal length. I'll be using this for other applications also. That's why I'm directly showing you the data set as well. So the first category is the sepal length. Then we have sepal width. Then we have petal length. And then we have petal width. And the last one is the class. So class is actually the classifier. So based on the first 4 inputs, sepal length, sepal width, and other things, I'm trying to classify the flower based on the data. So finally, you have a class. So I think this data set will have 3 classes. First is setosa. There will be 2 more classes. Versicolor, setosa, versicolor, and there will be virginia. So there are 3 classes for this particular data set. So we'll try to cluster them how it is able to cluster and classify. We'll try to do it for this particular data set. It is a freely available data set that is available in internet. If you just type iris data, IRIS data in Google, it will automatically take you to that website. You can directly download. It is available in CSV format, or you can take it in other versions also. Other formats also you can take. But for working in Python, CSV.csv, a file with the extension .csv is necessary. So you can see here iris_csv. So you can take that CSV file, and that CSV file can be easily loaded here for clustering. So we are going to use one of the machine learning algorithms, k-means clustering. I think you have an idea about what is k-means. We'll see just the way how it works. So I'm importing few of the libraries, and from those libraries I'm taking few specific classes. So from Matplotlib I'm trying to take Axis 3D, from sklearn I'm taking k-means. So there are few things from which specifically I am taking. When you are importing packages, use the import command. If you are going to take one specific function or one specific class, the actual term will be class. If you are going to take one specific object, then you are going to use from so and so import this. So this will be the larger package. From that you are going to take the Axis 3D. So all these things will come inbuilt, so you can just import from that. So you can see the command varies here. If you directly import a package, it is import. If you are going to take, then you are going to say from so and so import so and so package. So from X import Y. So this is how you do for certain packages. So all these things you can either refer the Anaconda website, or with use you'll know which package is under which class, and it will be easy for you to take. Even if you are not aware of all these things, if you just take a function, say suppose I have a function here. So this Axis 3D, I have a function. I am not sure where to use this function or where this function comes from. If you just go and type in the Anaconda website, I'll share all that website details. It itself will give you, it will be available in such and such package. You can just import. Even the command for importing, this command from mtl_toolkit dot import Axis 3D, everything is there. You can just take and put it in your interpreter and go ahead with your actions. So I'm going to import all these things now. It is taking time, you can see. So now it is done. It is imported. So I'm going to create two different plots. So two different k-means clustering. So one is with 8 clusters and the other is with 3 clusters. So the data actually had 3 clusters. We saw the data. It had 3 classes. One was very color, and there were 3 different Sentosa. There were 3 classifiers. So I'm trying to classify with 8 and 3. I'm using the k-means for doing this. So here you see, so this is the command for setting up the random number. So that is fine. Now here, this is the command. The thing I have highlighted is for actually loading the data set. So iris is equal to dataset dot load iris. Now this will actually contact the URL and upload the data. The thing is, you should know the name correctly. If you know the name correctly, iris, then it will go to the URL and it will be able to take the data. There will be one more way also, reading from a file. That also I'll show you in the next example. If you take the data set, put it in your computer or your laptop in some specific location. Say suppose you are placing the data set in Python folder. You can give the path also. You can give the path and load the CSV file. That is also possible. This is one way of actually loading the data. Even if it is not available in your local disk, it will try to interact with the internet and it will try to extract the data. So this is directly possible. We need not give specifically, but the name you should give correctly. You cannot just give any random XYZ. It will obviously end in result error. So if you give a proper name, it will automatically download and you can take the data. So I've taken the data and I've stored in this particular class. Iris is the name of my class in which I'm storing the iris data. So from this iris data, I'm taking the X and the Y. So Y are the targets, which was the last column, the classifier column. I showed you, right? So that will be the target column. It is placed in Y, and the previous 4 columns is placed in X. Now I'm creating 2 estimators. One is for 8 clusters and the other is for the 3 clusters. I'll run you through the code first, and then we'll execute and see how everything works. I'm creating 2 plots. So I'm going to one for 8 clusters and one for 3 clusters. So I've given a figure number also. I've given a figure title. You can see titles, 8 clusters and 3 clusters. So how far I'm going to execute till I have value in my estimator. So this estimator is the actual algorithm for creating the clusters. So here is the function k-means. I'm saying k-means. I'm not in k-means will have different parameters. I'm not worried about any other parameter. I'm just giving the number of clusters alone as the input. So number of clusters in the first case it is 8, and in the second case it is just it's 3. So here you see this is actually a tuple. I've created, we saw in the first class. So it is a tuple. I've given a k-means cluster, first one, and then I've specified it as a k-means algorithm with the number of clusters as 8. So this k-means obviously has a lot of parameters. I'm leaving all the other things as default. I'm only mentioning the number of clusters. So for the next one, I'm calling the same k-means function with 3 clusters. So that is all. I've established a k-means. I don't have to write elaborate algorithm. This entire thing is only for giving out the graph. So this is the line which is actually creating the clusters from the data set, and the remaining entire thing is for giving out the graph with the X and Y data. The iris data that we actually generated here. You can see X and Y. X is the input and Y is the target. So based on that, we are going to actually visualize the data. So I'm going to give plot, subplots. I'm going to create 2 plots. So 2 different titles. I've given a figure number, and then I'm giving the axis dimensions. So these are all not mandatory. If you want, if you know how to handle these parameters, you can give the dimensions for the parameters, or you can leave them as default. So see, you can see here. So this is the important line, scatter plot. So this scatter plot, you can see I've actually used the 0th column, 2nd column, and 3rd column. So you can see here, I've used the 0th column, 2nd column, and 3rd column. If you verify it with the CSV file, the 3rd column will be petal width, the 0th column will be sepal length, and the 2nd column is actually petal length. I've given it correspondingly. So the 3rd column, petal width, 0th column is petal length, and the 2nd column is petal length, sepal length, and petal length. So I'm using the corresponding. So this is the important function here. I'm using the data points, the data columns actually. X, the entire column. Y, 0th entire column. And 2, the entire column of 2. So I'm taking all the data and I'm trying to create a scatter plot with respect to the k-means that I had initialized earlier, which is given in estimators. So I've just given the colors. So these are all the colors and other things. And then I'm just labeling it. I'm clustering it based on the last labels. So I'm clustering it on the labels part. So these 3 lines are there to suppress the, I'll show you. So if I don't use those lines, I'll be actually getting the points here. I hope you remember when we had -1 to 3.5. For each and every data point, it showed the values -1, then 3, then 2, 2.5, etc. So in order to suppress that, because it is a 3D plot, it will look very cluttered. So I'm going to use this. I'm ticking the labels. So tick labels will actually remove the data points. I'm saying not to give any data points, so it will remove the data points. So this is how I'm going to give the axis labels. You can see I'm giving the X label, Y label, and Z label. You can see here X label, Y label, and Z label. So I've given the axis labels. Because it is 3D, I need to be specific. So I've given the labels, and then I'm fixing the title for the figure. So I'm taking the first title for the figure and I'm displaying it. Finally, I'm increasing the figure number because I'm going to display more than one figure. I'm increasing the figure number, and this is all you can see. It is under a for loop. It is under a for loop. So it will loop again, create the second figure also. So this is for creating the clusters for a already existing data. So now we'll try to run the code. We can see this is the output. This is for 8 clusters. You can see there are multiple clusters here. It will be overlapping because actually the data had only 3 clusters. So, but we are creating it wrong initialization. We are having 8 clusters. We are saying we need 8 centers. So automatically you can see few overlapping, and you are not able to actually correlate them. But here you can see the 3 clusters are clearly classified. You can see the difference between the two. Here it is not that very clear. The clusters, here is one cluster, here you have a lot of overlapping and interlocking clusters, but here to some extent this is yellow, this is green, and this is purple. So it has been classified properly as 3 because the data actually had only 3 clusters, iris data. So we are able to classify it in a proper way. So this is your k-means. So k-means is one form of grouping your data together. So it is a form of clustering. You have actually clustered one form of machine learning. You can do clustering using this k-means, which is a simple function which is available in your sklearnkit. You can just call that function, pass your data. If you have a data which needs to be classified or clustered, instead of using this iris, all you'll have to do is load your own data set. Load your own data set, differentiate the input and the targets, the data and the targets, differentiate the target. The targets will usually be in the last column. So give it as the last column, and then you try to create the clusters. If you are going to give, if you don't know the number of clusters, you can arbitrarily give any number of clusters. Try and see. This is just a first step. So you're trying to give clustering. You can actually leave the algorithm to cluster by itself. That is what we'll see in the SVC and SVR, the last part of this presentation. So here I know I have an already existing knowledge. So based on that, I gave 3. In order to show the difference, we had a cluster with 8. So that is for clustering. So next we'll see a little of linear regression. So we'll move from that to classification we'll move to linear regression. So we are going to see a little of regression. So here also I'm going to take a data file and I'm trying to predict some values. So here the example we are going to see here, I'll show you the data set first. So this is the data set, which is a fuel cell example. You have these many, you have almost 13 parameters. I have a model year and then make, model number, vehicle capacity, engine size, cylinders. It's a mechanical problem, transmission, fuel type. So there are few input parameters. And the last column is CO2 emission. Now what, in this example, what we are going to do is, based on the first 12 parameters, what will be the CO2 emission? We are trying to calculate the CO2 emission if a vehicle is of this type. We are trying to predict. We are trying to predict the value for CO2 emission. Say, suppose if the engine size is 2.4, what will be the CO2 emission? If the fuel type is Z, what will be the emission? So we are going to, this particular example, we are going to see in 2 different forms. This is a linear regression example. The first one is actually a single variable analysis. Next one is a multivariable analysis. In single variable analysis, we'll take just one of the parameters, engine size, one of the columns. Take engine size and compare its correlation with CO2 emission. So how the CO2 emission varies based on engine size. So that will be the first example. The next example, we are going to take 7 of the parameters available from A to L. We are going to take 7 or 6 or 7 parameters from here. And based on the combined effect of all the 6 parameters, we are going to predict the CO2 emission. Initially, one single column, its effect on CO2 emission. Then the next example, multivariate. So that is the normal behavior, multivariate. You cannot expect a CO2 emission to just depend on fuel type. Just fuel type, what will be the emission? Obviously, you are not going to get the proper results. So you should have a different factors. Multiple factors will be actually influencing the CO2 emission. So now based on that, how the CO2 emission varies. So have a look at these Excel sheet. Just make a note of what are all the variables available, and then we'll see how our CO2 varies. So we'll go for the linear regression function. So as usual, I'm importing few packages and few functions from those packages I'm importing. Now this is the second way of importing data file. I have a CSV file loaded in my desktop. So I'm reading it from that file. So for reading it from a file, I'm going to use the PD, pandas. So this is the first time you are going to use pandas. So pandas package, if you are installed, you can import the pandas as PD. PD will be the object. Importing is done here. So with this PD, I'm calling the read CSV function. Now this read CSV, that is why I said import, save them as CSV. In the internet, there will be multiple versions. There will be CSV, there will be Excel binary format. So there will be different formats. CSV will be relatively easy to handle. Even for MATLAB, CSV will be relatively easy to handle. So use read CSV and give the path of the file, the complete path of the file starting from C, whichever drive. If you have stored in E drive, E, then your name probably, then Python. So whatever is the full path of the file, give them within double quotes. So it is preferable to give within double quotes here. So give double quotes and give the entire path of the file. Now I say that my file has a header line. So you can see here, there is a first line which doesn't have data. First line is not actually the data, the column indexes, the column names. So I'm mentioning that also. It does have a column name. That is what is given here, head. And then I'm going to try to display the data. This is just for display. I've just showed you. We'll run through the code and then we'll run and execute and see. We'll first analyze the code line by line, and then we'll try to execute and see. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take only the two columns, engine size and CO2 emission. I'm not taking anything else. I'm taking engine size and I'm going to take CO2 emission. So these are the two columns. I'm going to correlate this column with CO2 emission. What is the effect of engine size on CO2 emission? And based on just the engine size, I'm going to predict the CO2 emission. Just with one variable, I'm trying to predict. I'm doing a regression. Regression is you're going to calculate values. You train your model. What is regression? You train your model, you keep the model ready, then you give a random input and see whether it is able to give you the predicted results. So that is what is regression is all about. So I'm going to give you a random, I'm going to train with the data set. Using this CSV, I'll be training my data set and then I'll be giving a random input for engine size and I'll try to get the value for CO2 emission. If you are trying to get a value out, that is where we'll call it as regression. Okay. So here I'm again using first I'm just plotting the data just for our own visualization. I'm just plotting the data which I've just considered, the engine size and the CO2 emission. I'm plotting the data. This is how the engine size and CO2 emission are actually related to each other. Engine size and CO2 emission. I'm just plotting and showing the visual effects of the data. And after that only, I'm going to actually train my model and test my model. This is where your actual ML starts. You're training the data and dividing the entire data set. So I have 1067 data here, I think, the columns. So I'm going to divide this into 80% for training. Training obviously requires more data. give as much as possible as data for training, but at the same time, it should not be too much so that the model is overtrained. So for whatever data we have, I'm dividing it 80% I'm taking it for training and 20% I'm taking for testing. This is just my way of segregating. If you want, you can make it as 75 and 25, or even if you want, it can be 60-40. It depends on how you take. But my preference would be I need a little more data for training. If my model is trained with a larger amount of data, the accuracy is little better. So I'm dividing it into 80 and 20. I'm training it with 80% of data. That is what is given here in this line. So I'm training the data with 80%. So this length of data, I'm multiplying it with 0.8 so that it gets converted for the number of rows. We saw this colon operator in the first class itself. So I'm saying from up to the start position till this 0.8, use it for training. From the remaining position till the end, use it for testing. So this is where I said the colon operator will be useful for slicing your data. So that is how this colon works here. So colon till this 0.8. From that location till the end, go in for 0.2. So you are dividing your data using the colon operator, 80 for train and 20 for test. So we have stored in separate variables, train and test. Now we'll be using this train and test for regression analysis. So again, you can put all these import before itself. It need not come in between. Because I was debugging, I had put it in between. You can move all these commands from import. All these import commands can be had beforehand itself. The first cell of any project will be all the importing. Next, data part, and then your display calculation, and finally your visualization part. That is how we generally write. So then I'm going to use the linear regression. So I'm going to create the linear regressor. I'm creating the regression model and I'm storing it in the variable regr. Now this regr will be my personal variable for regression. So if I'm going to pass my data into that, it will train the network, train the model. It will create the regression model. So here I'm giving the data. I'm just giving the engine size as X. So in that training data itself, I'm giving the input part. The input part here is just a single variable, which is engine size. What is the output part? We are trying to calculate the CO2 emission. So CO2 emission will be the Y part. So X part is just the engine size and the Y part is nothing but the CO2 emission. This is what we are trying to predict. CO2, we are trying to predict based on what value? Engine size value. So that is what is given here. Engine size, I'm taking it as X. CO2 emission is what I want as the output. It is given as Y. So here again, for any regression coefficients, you actually require the coefficients and the intercepts. So you will require the coefficients and intercepts for a regressor. So I'm going to calculate the regr is actually my regression object. So using that, I have the coefficient parameter and then the intercept parameter. You can see it is COEF underscore. So this is how I depict my parameters. So another one, intercept underscore. So I can give the coefficient and the intercept values for this regression. So regression has its own equation. So based on that, I'm calculating the intercept and the coefficients. This coefficient and intercept will actually determine the efficiency of the regressor. So based on that, now I'm going to fit the line. So we already had plotted the data. Now I'm going to do a line fitting. So for that also I need the coefficient and the intercept. The same formula, slope into X data plus Y intercept. So the slope is nothing but the coefficient into X data, train of X plus the intercept value. So this is the formula for line fitting. We already saw mx plus b. So m is nothing but the coefficient into x, which is nothing but the train x, plus b, which is nothing but the intercept. So I'm using this particular formula for fitting the line. The line, for clarity's sake, is given in green. The blobs we already had in the default color. Line I'm giving in green. And then as usual, I'm plotting the X label and Y label. So this will give you this graph. We'll run each and every one, but now just have a look. So now I'm going to define a function. So this function also, this type of functions we saw in the morning class, I'm defining a function using def. This is the name of the function I am creating. This is my function. This is not an inbuilt function. I'm creating this function. I'm passing two parameters, input features, three parameters, input features, intercept, and then slope. That is x, m, and b, what we saw in the first example, x, m, and b, and then terminating it with a colon. So here is what the predicted value. I'm giving the predicted value. So input feature into x into slope plus the intercept. So this will give the predicted value. So this is the formula for getting the predicted value, and I'm returning the predicted value. So this is the function I have given. Now I will be calling this function for my own input. So what is my input? My engine size. So I'm giving an engine size as 3.5. I have hard coded it. I'm not taking it from the user. I have given that in the interpreter itself. I'm directly giving the code as 3.5, and I'm calling this function. You can see get regression prediction. So that function has been called with whatever size I am giving, my engine size, and then I'm going to use the intercept and the slope which I got, that is the coefficient. Intercept, slope is the coefficient which I got from the model REGR. So this is the model I had actually trained. Yeah, so this is the model we have actually trained. You can see here. See, this is the model we had actually trained. The REGR is the model we have trained using the train X and train Y. So this is the training part. So I'm giving that once it is trained, my model will be able to predict values for me. So I should use the same regressor here, REGR. So I'm using that to predict values, and I'm going to print it out. So the estimated emission, I'm printing it out. So that is for a single input. So now this is for a single input. So far so good. We'll just run and see how it works. So I'm going to load the file using this cell. I'm going to load the file. Yes, it has been loaded, and I've displayed a few of the functions using the head function. I have displayed the first few lines. I'm taking my data as only the engine size and the CO2 emission. I'm just giving a visualization. I'm not doing anything. I'm just plotting whatever data I've taken, engine size and CO2. There were many columns. We are considering only these two, and I've just visualized the data. Now I'm dividing the data into training and testing. I've divided the data. So here I'm actually going to initialize my regressor, REGR. I've initialized my regressor as a linear regression. I've called this function, which means this regressor, REGR, will be a linear regression model. I'm using this linear regression model. Now I'm actually fitting the data. I'm actually training my regressor. So this is the command for training the regressor. I'll just give a comment here so that so I'm training the regressor, and then I'm printing out the coefficient intercept values. Once it is done, the regressor, because it is a linear regression, it will fit a line only. I hope you know that. So we have the slope and the intercept. Slope is nothing but the coefficient, and then the intercept. So that is what is done here. I'm printing the coefficient and the that is a slope. So this is a slope and the intercept. So once it is done, I'm fitting the entire data for a line. Yes, I fit the data for a line. You can see the line here that is being fit. So this is the best fit line for the entire data. So what we'll be actually doing it, because it is a linear regression, it has fit it as a linear line. So based on this line only, we'll be predicting the values. So that is why we are fitting a line, because it is a linear regression. It is a linear regression. We are fitting a line. If it is a line, you need a slope, that is the coefficient and the intercept. Now with this coefficient and intercept and the fitted line, we'll try to predict. So that is what happens in linear regression. I assume that you know what is linear regression. So this is the function which is being defined. Yes, of course, I've defined the function. Now I'm trying to calculate a value for one specific parameter. Maybe you can give a different number and see the value varies here. So you can see for any engine size, I'm getting the predicted results. So if suppose I'm going to design an engine with 5.7 as the size, then what will be the CO2 emission? So this is the actual prediction that is happening. Even before designing it, you're trying to predict what will be the emission if my engine size is 5.7 or if my engine size is 2.4. So that is what we are trying here. This is what we are trying. This is the actual prediction that is happening. I'm giving the engine size. I'm trying to get the estimated value. Now this is for analysis purpose. Now the last step is for analysis purpose. What we're actually going to do is, how far is my linear regressor good or bad? You should know, right? So we have trained with some 80% of data, but we are not sure whether that particular linear regressor is performing well or not. So in order to understand that metrics, we actually had a separate data as test, right? We had 80% for training. The remaining 20 we didn't use at all. So far we have not used. The 80% trained data was used for training the REGR regressor. Now we have the testing data. Now I'm going to evaluate the linear regressor with the help of this test data. For that, I'm going to actually again split my X and Y. The X part will be the engine size, which is going to be the input, and Y part is the CO2 emission, which is being predicted. The predicted one will always be the output, that is the Y part. Now with this, the same REGR, we are trying to predict. We'll give only the X as the input and we'll derive an output. You can see the difference. It is test underscore Y, but here it is test underscore Y underscore. So this Y underscore variable is actually the output variable from the predicted value. Here it is the actual output. Test Y is the actual output. This is the predicted output. With an underscore additional is the predicted output. This is the actual output. Because it is a test data set, we know what is the actual CO2 emission. Now we are giving only the input to the model. We are not giving anything. We are just giving only the input to the model and you are getting the output. Now with this output, we are going to compare test Y and test Y underscore. You are going to compare these two variables. You can calculate the mean squared error. You can calculate the absolute error. I hope you know all about these parameters. You can calculate the R square score. So with these R squared score, you can actually evaluate how the model performs. So we are calculating three metrics. One is the absolute error, and then the sum of mean square MSE. We are calculating the mean squared error, and finally the R squared score. Now we can see the R squared score. I'll just run this also. It is also done. I've calculated the R squared score and this one. So for the absolute error, I've written the formula here: direct subtraction, predicted value minus actual value, mean squared error, predicted value minus actual value square. So you can see the formula which is being given here. This is the absolute error, which is given as formula directly. So this is the mean squared error, formula given directly. But for R square, there is a function. So I'm calling that, I'm passing the actual and the predicted result and the actual result as parameters, and we are going to get this R2 score. So this R2 underscore is a function. If you pass these two parameters, it will actually calculate. This R2 square is based on variance. The actual formula is variance explained by the model divided by the total variance. So with that, we'll be calculating the R2. We can analyze more on what is this R2 square. So if you just run and see, you will get the values. You can see we are having a 68.68 R2 square. Larger the R2 square, that is more closer to 1, better the results. So that is how we are going to see it. More closer to R2, or more closer to 1, that will be a better result. So this is with a single input, that is engine size. Now we'll see a multivariate regressor in which we are going to consider about 5 to 6 parameters in addition to engine size. In addition to engine size, take few more parameters and see how they are actually predicting the CO2 value. So that will be the next example. This is a single variate linear regressor. The next one is a multivariate linear regressor. So multivariate linear regressor meaning you are going to have more number of input parameters. So we'll understand the code first and then we'll go for execution. So here the same thing, I'm loading it, I'm displaying using head, I'm displaying the first few lines. And I'm taking the data. You can see initially there it was just the engine size. You can just compare and see. It was just the engine size, but here I have engine size, cylinders, fuel consumption city, then consumption, some different values, fuel consumption combination, so different parameters that we got from the Excel sheet. So based on the fuel, there are a lot of parameters based on fuel. So fuel determines CO2. Maybe that is what they are trying to say here. So based on these different parameters, we are going to check how our CO2 emission is going to vary. So see 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 and 6. Yes, 6. So we have considered 6 parameters. So that is going to be the X data. And whatever we are trying to predict, that will remain as the CO2 as Y. There we had it in a single data set itself because it was just 2. Now we have a large data, so I have divided into X and Y. So as usual, you're dividing the data into training part and testing part, 80% for training and 20% for testing. You're dividing it. And then you are going to actually create the linear regression. So here also I'm creating only a linear regression, but I'm using it multiple multivariate inputs, not just one multivariate. I've created the regressor and then I'm going to separate the train X and train Y. So this is that from the training input, I'm taking the X alone. X is the input and Y, X's input involves all these parameters, engine size, cylinders, fuel consumption, etc. And Y is just only one thing we are trying to predict, which is nothing but CO2. And now I'm actually fitting the data. This is nothing but training. Fitting is nothing but you are training your model with the train X and train Y. So next what we are going to do is I'm going to actually calculate the coefficients. So I'm going to calculate the coefficient. So now we have different parameters. So I'm calculating the coefficients for different parameters. One might be directly proportional, whereas another engine size is directly proportional. You can see fuel consumption and combination something are having an inverse effect. Some will be directly proportionate, others might not be directly inversely proportionate. So based on these values, we are determining the coefficients for each and every parameter. Coefficients are calculated. Once the coefficients are calculated, now my regressor is ready. So now with this regressor, I can predict for any given input value. Here, what we are going to do is we are not going to give a direct input. Instead of that, we are going to calculate the R2 square with respect to the test. So we had a testing set separate for testing it, right? So we take the test X and test Y. We segregate the data. The X part, all the input part goes to X and the output part goes to Y. And I'm going to call the predictor with the test X alone. So here test underscore Y is the actual output, whereas Y underscore predict is the predictor output. So here we see a difference. So test underscore Y is the actual output that is available in the data set. Now I have predicted it and my output is Y underscore predict. I'll be comparing test underscore Y and Y underscore predict. See, I'm comparing here. Test underscore Y and Y underscore predict. I'm just calculating the R2 square and I'm giving you finding the value of R2 square, R2 score. R square is actually R square. So we'll just run this code. So this part, I'm actually dividing the data into input and output. Now I'm dividing it into training set and testing set. Here is where I'm actually creating the linear regressor. using the training set alone. I'm using the training set alone for calculating. Next, I'm calculating the coefficients. Only based on these coefficients, I'll be using my regressor. So I have calculated the coefficients and printing it out. And here I'm actually doing the testing part. I have tested it for the 20% of data. So this test has the 20% of data, and I'm calculating the R square score. So this R squared score, you can see it is actually 0.88. Previously it was 0.68. You can see it is actually 0.68. With just the engine size, you can with just the engine size, you can see it is just 0.68, or you can even say it as 68% of accuracy. But here it is 88%, because the more closer to 1, the better its performance. So 88. You can just convert it into a percentage if you want for better clarity. So you can see that it is relatively better because we have few other parameters as well. So like the cylinders, like the fuel consumption, some combination effects. So based on multivariate, usually when we do a research or a project, we'll be having multiple parameters affecting a single output. So for those cases, this multivariate regression will be more efficient than a single variable regression. So multivariate is the norm of the day. You'll be having multiple parameters affecting. Climate is not affected by just one factor. It is affected by multiple factors. How do these multiple factors affect? So all these can be used. If you are going to design a motor, or if you are going to design an engine, then what are all the factors that will determine the efficient usage of an engine? So based on that, you can go in for the capacity, or if you are trying to predict the value or value for a engine capacity, or how it functions, or its sustainability, whatever metric you want, you will be having different parameters working on that. So you can use this multivariate regression for actually calculating, and we have also proved that it is giving a better score. So this is about your linear regression and multivariate regression. Now the last part, we'll see SVC and SVR, support vector classification and support vector regression. So SVM, I hope you know what is SVM, support vector machines. So these support vector machines will be actually trying to calculate or divide your clusters based on a plane. It will try to divide, and it will try to give you a proper classifier. It is actually a classifier. It will classify the input. If you give an input, it will try to classify in which class a particular input is going to belong. So that is a classifier. And also you do have a support vector regressor. You can calculate the value. So this clustering and classification, it will place your data in one group or the other. So that is a classifier. Whereas a regressor will give you numerical value. As we saw in the CO2 emission, it will give you numerical values. In the first k-means clustering, it clustered the existing data. This classifier, it is going to classify your data, and it is going to give you the class into which your current data will belong to. A regressor is going to give you an output, how it actually predicting an output. Prediction, we call them, we group them under the regressor category. So we'll see how this SVC and SVR works. So as usual, I've imported few files. That is the first cell in my Jupyter lab. I've imported few things, and then I'm using the data set to load the data set, iris data. It has been loaded, and you can see I'm just taking two parts, 0 and 1 alone is considered, :2, so the 2 will be suppressed. So I'm taking only the first 2 columns in the iris data set. 0 and 1 alone is taken, and the target is the last column, and the last column is directly passed to Y. So I'm just considering 2 inputs, 0th column and the first column. I think that is sepal length and petal length, that is alone is considered as X, and Y I'm taking it as the target part, which we actually saw the classifier Sentosa. There were few classifiers, right? So the classifier part is given in Y. Now I'm creating the SVM. So in that SVM, I'm using SVC. So you can see So this is where I'm using the SVC. So we'll see a little in detail about what is this SVC classifier. So we should mention a kernel. So that is very important for a SVM. We are going to mention what kernel it is being used. You can use a linear kernel. You can use RBF, radial basis functions. And then you can also use sigmoid function, polynomial function. You can use few kernels. Based on the kernels, your graph will vary. We'll see. We are going to see a pictorial representation of that, how it is going to vary. And then you are going to give the regularization parameter. The C is actually the regularization parameter. It has to be a positive constant. So it doesn't affect much. Even if I give 1 or 5, it is not affecting much. But for few very sensitive data sets, the C value will largely affect. As such, I've just only tried a trial and error. Maybe you can do a little more study on how this C has to be fixed for your own specific data set, and you can try it with the trial and error also. And then you are going to fix the gamma value, which is nothing but the kernel coefficient value. I'm going to leave that also as auto mode because I don't want to bias it. I'm just giving it as auto. So once it is done, I'm creating my SVC for the data X and Y. So this X and Y is what I created here. So for this SVC support vector classifier, I'm fitting the data with X and Y, and I'm taking that in my this particular SVC variable. So this is a variable which I have defined. If you want, you can give a different name as well. Now the remaining things are just for your creating your meshes. As we saw, we divided in 30, 20, 80, 20, 80 for training and 20 for testing. So similarly, here also, you are going to divide you're not going to divide your data. You are going to arrange your data in such a way that your classifier will be able to read it. So for that, I'm creating a mesh grid. I'm creating a mesh grid for calculating the data points. I should know the minimum value and the maximum value for X separately, and I should know the minimum value and maximum value for Y separately. Based on that, I'm going to calculate the height. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm creating the mesh grid. So once this mesh grid is created, I'm going to try to plot the data based on the number of classifiers or number of clusters. So you can see here again, I'm going to use the scatter plot. I'm giving the input as the 0, 1, 1. I said you earlier itself, we had only :2. :2 meaning 2 will be suppressed and we will take only 0 and 1. So I have taken only 0 and 1 here. The cluster is done based on Y. So that is the target we had. So Y is the target data. I hope you saw in the first thing Y. Yeah, here Y. Y is the target. So you are doing it based on Y. And then I'm going to give a different plot here. There we saw Spring's plot. Now I'm giving a different paired plot. I'm giving a different plot here. But here also, this also creates only blobs. That is dots. It will be creating dots. So I'm fixing the X label. I'm fixing the Y label. And I'm fixing my limits. The limits is what we saw, X min and X max. And then I'm giving a title and I'm going to display the plot. Because it is based on Y, it will create only 3. The iris data set, I hope you remember seeing it. So we'll close the fuel cell model. So this is the iris data set. So we are considering only the first 2 columns, which is nothing but sepal length and sepal width. And the last column is the target column. So this target column basically has 3 classifiers. So first one, we saw that in our k-means itself. So iris setosa, and then iris versicolor, and the last one is iris virginia. So that will be the end, right? So there is only 3 classifiers. We have only 3 different targets. So that is why in your graph, if you see, you will get only 3 plots. So previously in k-means, what we did was we gave 3 as well as we gave 8, and we saw the different combinations. That is what we saw here, right? I hope you remember that graph. So we gave the clusters with 3, and this is 8. So we tried to cluster it into 8, and we saw some chaotic plot here. And this 3, it looked more classified because it actually has only 3. So similarly, here also, we have not given the number of clusters. We are allowing the system to learn from the data itself. So again, but still then it is creating only 3 because it knows the target column has only 3 nodes, it is able to classify. There we gave the number of clusters. You remember in k-means, we gave the number of clusters as 3 and 8. But in SV classify, SVC, we are not giving the number of clusters. It is automatically calculating it from the target column. So that is the difference between the two methods. So now we'll run and see how it actually works. So first importing is done, and now we have loaded the data into X and Y, only the first 2 columns into X, and the last column, which is the classifier column, into Y. I'm creating my SVC, support vector classifier, and then I am setting up all my parameters for creating my mesh plot. Once that is done, inside that mesh, I'm going to give my scatter plot. So sepal length and sepal width were the 2 columns. So you can see here, sepal length and sepal width are the 2 columns which is considered. So I've taken only those 2, and I'm doing it with the, you can see when we created the SVC, it was, the kernel was linear. You can see it is a linear kernel. So I've given the title as SVC with linear kernel. The title is given, and I'm going to run it now. So I get my plot. It is actually classified into 3 segments. I never gave 3. Automatically, it has classified into 3 based on the target column. So this is SVC classifier. Now we'll see how your RBF works. I've fixed gamma to scale. I'm not using auto. I've modified my C also. I've made few changes, and I'm trying to create another classifier. So let me see how it works. All the remaining is the same. I've not done any change. I've created the mesh plot, the same thing. This is the main line. This is the important line for creating your classifier and fitting the data also.
Madam,
Yes, ma'am.
Madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to disturb.
Yes.
Time.
Yes, ma'am. This is the last one, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. You can take up to 2 to 3 minutes.
That's all, ma'am. This is the last one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So you can see here, we don't see much of a difference. So this is for SVC classifier. So I would also like to show you in the iris data set, we had a classifier column, but in the fuel data set, we didn't have a classifier column. It is a data set for prediction. We actually wanted to calculate the value for CO2. Now, if you try to use that fuel cell CSV, I'm trying to use the same classifier, which worked very good for iris data set for this fuel, but the data set is completely different. The nature of the data set is also completely different. Now what happens, see what happens. So you can see you are getting a very, very cluttered plot here. You cannot classify that fuel cell because it is completely a regression model data. You're trying to predict the output. So you can see a lot of clusters here. It is finding it very difficult to group the data. Whereas your iris data is actually a grouped data because it is based on one particular output. But whereas the CO2 is a real range. It varies between a set of data. You can see here the CO2 emission was varying in hundreds from 100 to 250. So in that case, when you try to group or cluster them, you are creating something from some random groups. So this is what will happen if you are going to take the wrong data set and trying to implement a wrong algorithm. For regression models, you cannot classify, you cannot do a cross product. So you should know what you actually want, whether you want a regression model or you want a classifier or a clustering model. So it is completely based on the nature of your application. So there is one more regressor also. So this works same as that. You'll be fitting a line as the previous data. So I'll just share this file with you. Maybe you can run and see. That's it, ma'am. That's it from my side.
No problem, ma'am. You can continue. The participants who are working in this area, they'll be getting benefited.
So I'll just run and show the last file also, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you can proceed.
So this is just this is classifier is very important. Regressor, it is just a difference. There isn't much of a change here. I'm just using a different different data set here. That's all. Nothing much of a different here. I'm just using that, and that I'm using a standard scalar standardization scales. So you can actually what is normalization. We generally normalize data. Data normalization. Anyone dealing with data, they'll know. So there is one more method called as standardization. So here we are using the standardization method. So using that standardizer, I'm trying to fit my data. I'm actually transforming my data to a standard form. Normalization, we'll try to bring it between 0 to 1. So similar to that, once we bring to 0 to 1, we do the manipulation. It is more predictable when it is within a prescribed range. After doing that, we are going to convert it into the higher standard form. So that is what is being done here. I'm fitting a transform. I'll be also doing an inverse transform. Here the kernel is SVR. There we saw it was SVC. Now here it is SVR, but the kernels are the same. RBF, linear, sigmoid, it is all the same. I'm just trying to plot the curves for regressor. I'm calculating the actual values, and then I'm comparing it with the data in the data set. Whatever is there in the CSV file, I'm calculating my own regression value and comparing that with the CSV file, and I'm trying to watch the difference. So I'll just run and show you this because different kernels produce different results. So that will be a little interesting to you. So this is where I'm actually fitting my transform and standardizing it. Because it is a regression, it is a good idea to either normalize or standardize my data. You can see I'm using my RBF kernel. It is throwing a warning, so I'm just ignoring it. And then I'm trying to fit my data. The magenta color ones are the actual data points, and the green line is my fitted line. That is what I have predicted. Green is what I have predicted. That is my model SVR has predicted, and the magenta are the data points which is actually there in the Excel sheet. So you can obviously see some changes. The regressor is not an exact fit here. So now what we are going to do is, that was with RBF. Now instead of using RBF, if I'm going to use the polynomial grid, if I'm going to use the polynomial function or a linear function or a sigmoid function, see how it works. So see how the sigmoid function does not fit at all. It is even worse than the RBF. If you are going to use the linear model, it will be a real wrong thing. So you can see here, see, it doesn't fit at all. So that is the effect of the kernel. For some applications, the kernel will be very useful. You will have to try different kernels depending upon the nature of the function. The RBF or a sigmoid function will be more useful. If it is linear or polynomial, it can lead in erratic results. So the kernel also plays a vital role. For some application, the kernel doesn't affect at all. You'll be getting a better regressor. So it completely depends on the application you are going to take in hand and how your data is coming out and how you are fitting a line for your own data. So that all plays a vital role in determining your kernel for an SVC or an SVR. So I think this is that's it. We have seen different variations of linear regression as well as classifier, clustering, SVC and SVR as well.
Participants, if you have any queries, you may type in the chat box. One question was already asked. It was which finite element? Sir, your question please. What is the best finite element library for Python programming language?
Finite element.
I think PyPy, that is FIPY, PyPy or SFEPy can be used, sir.
Okay.
Can be used as Python library for finite elements. Please try. For your problem, I think that will vary according to your problem, sir.
Yeah, it will be varying according to your problem.
Yes, sir. Other than 5pi, you are having SFE fine.
How to learn Python individually? Okay, to Python individually, you'll have to start with the first session that I sent you. That if that is the first way to start, you'll have to do with the basic data types, data structures only. Then you'll be able to actually do data handling. Machine learning practically deals with lot of data, so you should know how to handle them. It is purely your interest. I'll share few websites along with the installation document where you can get the different functions and different packages, like what a person asked, which package can be used for what. So all these things are available in those websites. You can just make a use of it, even how to install, how to run, how to use functions. Everything will be much useful from that site. You can start from that probably. I'll be sharing my files. You can start from that.
Any other queries? Yeah, I'm happy to thank Madam. Very good session, excellent session. You have elaborated a lot. As electrical engineers, we are very much lacking in this Python programming. So now we are having some more confidence to write our programs using this Python language. So we have already used MATLAB.
Yes.
Since MATLAB has some restrictions, so we are all thinking to move towards Python. So your session is highly inspiring and motivating one. So if the participants are having any doubt, you may ask Madam at any time. We will share her mail ID with the participants in our WhatsApp group. And also, Madam, please share the document, Word document in which the simple Word document. So that is enough for building our own coding, I think.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. But what I've given now is just the first step. So with this, you can modify out of your own interest.
Yes, Madam. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. Thank you, Madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.